Hi, I'm Paul Westsells, President and CEO of Western Copper Gold. Western Copper Gold is developing the Casino Copper Gold project up in the Yukon. We've been developing this for about a dozen years, but really the excitement's been the past couple of years, and that excitement continued last year and into this year coming up. And so I'm really excited to be talking to you, Matthew, and always an engaging conversation when we get together.
Oh, I wish you were a bit more sincere than that. Go on. I had my favorite big company conversation. Look, good news. Rio have completed was it about $6 million they put in?
Yep, 6 million was the investment. Yep.
So where's that take them to? Where's they got now?
Yeah, so they're sitting a little under 10%, so 9.7%. And yeah, I mean, obviously in this market, $6 million is something that everyone's excited by. But really, what's more exciting to me is the new agreement that we have with Rio Tinto. So the agreement that we had previously with Rio Tinto was really about their evaluation of the project. So they came in, they took a look at the project, we did a bunch of work together. They like what they saw. So the new agreement is really about collaborative work over the next period. And that collaborative work is focused really, there's 4 areas. One is on permitting, just making sure we understand permitting and everything needs to be done there. Port, which I think we'll be talking about here a bit later. Power, which is a big thing, and we should touch on that. And then the last bit is process improvement and project improvement. And so because Rio Tinto had 400 people within that organization looking at our project over the past 2.5 years. They've done a lot of work. They're sharing that work with us. So right now, that's what we're doing. We're reviewing that work, seeing if there's some additional optimizations we can bring into the project.
Well, let me try and understand something. Obviously, Ken Engquist left, back in October.
Yep.
Was that a case of, well, why? Was it a case of Rio trying to, reverse themselves into more of your decision making, or what went on there?
We let Ken go. That's what happened there, and I to be honest, I'm going to leave it at that. It just, these things happen. He's a great guy. I've got a lot of respect for Ken, but it wasn't the right fit. Earlier this week we added in a guy by the name of Paul Hosford, so strengthening that engineering team. Paul, if you look at the last 2 copper mines that were built in Western Canada was Red Chris, but Red Chris was used equipment, a bit of a different sort of project, and then Mount Milligan. Paul built Mount Milligan. We're super excited to have him as part of the team. He brings, a really good skill set into the project, and, he's going to be complementing Cam. Cam's retiring, but he's like one of those old engineers. I think, he's in his late 70s. And he's like, I talked to him yesterday. He was like, we got to do this. We got to do this. He's not retiring. But so we've got a strong engineering team. And like I said, step 1, we actually had our kickoff meeting last week with Rio. We went through all of the potential optimizations that they'd found, and we're going to sort of bring those to ground.
Okay. Yeah, he won't go anywhere. But that's for sure. Look, okay, I get it. You're going to get a change and evolve to kind of suit the stage of the project, and that's your decision. But more importantly, I guess people looking at this thing, you've seen that there's sort of accretive growth in the share price. It hasn't been $5 or $10 or whatever people like to jump up and down about these days.
Depends when you bought. If you bought when we were
20
cents.
I know, but I'm going to go from 2020 to now. From March 2020, which is a kind of real kind of low point of the past few years for everyone. But it's nice steady growth. So there's no complaints from me on that. But it's also a big project, and there's very few big projects that people are looking at now. Rio seem to have their hands, arms, and legs kind of wrapped around this at the moment. And I guess what people are looking for is that kind of, step change where they go full bore committed to this project, where they make a decision. So again, back to this most recent commitment, I get the collaborative bit, I get the lots of people looking at it, but what's the decision that they're going to make next, which are going to give the market something to look forward to?
Yeah. So, when we negotiated the new agreement with them, most of the agreement was about, what's next? Because, obviously one of the criticisms is like, is Rio just sitting there? Are they going to sit there on the sidelines and watch you guys do this? And, they got sort of this free option that people talk about on the project. And, we were very, very clear with them. Like, look, if that's what you want to do, that's, be honest and open with us about that. And we'll set an agreement with you that makes sense from that perspective. That's not what they said. No, look, it's really important to us that we hit, and we call it the 3 Ps, the permitting, the port, and the power. We can get those, a little bit further advanced, then we can talk about a more serious investment. And so we talked about the timeline for that. And the timeline for that, we said, look, it's going to take us about a year to make that happen. So the agreement is 18 months. It's only 18 months. And the idea is that we're going to be laser focused on those 3 Ps as well as the process optimizations. And, sitting down a year from when we were sitting down last time, which was LME week when we first started talking to Rio. So the LME week 2024, sitting down with them, and it'll be, okay, here's where we are on these things. Right now we're dating. The question is, are we going to get married? Right. So we'll see.
There's another question, but we'll leave that. Just on the terms of, again, this collaborative word that you use. Yeah. Okay, Mitsubishi's somewhere in the background.
Yes.
Well, Mitsubishi Materials.
We should talk about Mitsubishi because they're an important part of the story. Yeah.
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, no, and Mitsubishi is, so part of the work we're doing right now too is really work that Mitsubishi is critical for Mitsubishi to make a further investment. And it's really around concentrate quality. The Mitsubishi Materials, which is the group that has 5%, a little under 5% now of investment in the company. That's what they're focused on. So our agreement with them is to look at that. That work's being done. But, what's nice now is that our agreement with Mitsubishi, our agreement with Rio, both expire essentially around the same time, which is, so Mitsubishi is in March 2025. Rio is in May 2025. So, before that, obviously, we need to come to an agreement about how we move forward together on the project.
Because, no one kind of really sits on a big chunk of this yet. And I'm just wondering, does everyone move forward together? Is there a kind of agreement that one party takes all? What's your expectation, or what do you think the needs of the company are going forward in terms of getting that commitment in terms of time frame? I know you've got a bit of money, which is great, gives you optionality. Mm-hmm. Other people are spending their money on this too, so that's all good. But there comes a point where this just drags on and on until. Well, I guess people are just keen to sort of see some sort of decision where we see an uptick.
Yeah, obviously we're looking to improve share price, and so, yeah, so if we look at the next number of years, there's 2 ways. Other than acquiring other projects, although those things, but within the company as it stands now, and within the casino project, there's 2 ways that we're creating value. One is to potentially sell the company, right? And that's been probably the sort of the baseline that people's expectations have been built around. And, unfortunately, the Rio Tintos and Mitsubishis of the world, they're not fast movers like the gold industry. They're slow, they're cautious, they want to see significant de-risking, and that's what we're working through with them. The other way that you create significant shareholder value is to get this project permitted. So that, we've put together a team. We've now, like I announced earlier this week, we've strengthened the engineering part of that. And the other part of bringing on Paul Hossford, he also brought that Mount Milligan project, was involved with that through the permitting process. He knows that very, very well. And so that's another part of what we're doing. And then the third part, back to the ownership. We've got Rio purposely a little bit under 10%. We've got Mitsubishi under 5%. There is not significant control over this project by any of those majors. We're very active in terms of other conversations.
That's where I was going. That is good. Competitive tension. Okay. Can we talk about the I'm probably about 2 years out with this meme. You talked about being laser focused. So laser eyes on your 3 Ps. So permits, what's the timeline on that?
Yeah. So permits, last September, we got what are called our final ESC statement guidelines. Really big, mouth-twisting words, but what that means is, here's a list of what you need to submit. So we got that September. We have our marching orders from the regulator. Right now, we're beginning to sort of march through that. So we think that we can get that submitted around the end of this year is sort of what we're targeting for that. And, then we're into the process. And once we're into the process, it's 3 years to get through it. And so that's obviously a longer dated amount of work. It's also, I'll be honest, it's not an insignificant amount of money to get through that. So, I mean, the timing is good. We can get that application in, and, hopefully, like I said, I mean, we're going to be sitting down with Rio and Mitsubishi at near the end of this year, before obviously our agreements expire, and talking about what's next. So those are the sort of key things on the permitting front.
And did they leave you to do that? Or
Yeah,
are they going to get involved with that?
And
right.
So, but this is an important thing what does this collaborative thing mean with Rio? So why is that important, and why am I harping on that? Why that's important isn't necessarily, obviously from a technical perspective, it's great to have their technical input into the project, and that's happening. More importantly, large projects, our casino project is going to be the largest critical minerals project in Canada. We'll talk about power here in a sec. Power, it's important for everybody, including ourselves, including Rio Tinto, that we can identify a green power source for the casino project. That's well underway, and the idea is to connect the Yukon grid to the BC grid. To make that happen, this is about politics. It's about influencing governments to make this happen. So where this collaborative agreement is exciting for me is that when we talked to Rio, when we met with them at the end of last year, we said, look, Western Copper Gold, myself, I can go to Ottawa and push this really hard. But what's really powerful is if Rio Tinto is standing next to me while I'm making these arguments to, get green power to the Yukon, line up the port and make sure that that's secure. And so that there's agreement on that. And so we're working collaboratively on those issues as well.
Okay. And when I say we'll come to port and power in a second,
Yep.
but just sticking with this. So they will sit beside you in the room, but do they put their hands in their pockets and help you with what you describe as not insignificant costs over the next 3 years to deliver that document?
Yeah, that $6 million is a key part of that.
Is it enough?
It's probably not enough to get all the way through, but we're in this market, as everybody's well aware, cash is king. We do not want to run our reserves down to $2 million in the bank, and can trust me with, we'll be able to raise money. So we're being very, very cautious with that money right now. And so when we push, right now we're setting up to get into permitting. We're reviewing these project optimizations that were identified by Rio. The next step is to go in and push hard on the permitting front. We're not going to do that until we're fully, ready to go in and make that happen.
As in, you're sure that Rio's ready to move forward with you?
We have that commitment at this point in time. Yeah.
But not all the way, right? You've got a commitment to move forward, but you don't know to what point. And I guess that's what I'm saying. You don't want to spend money if you're not certain that you've got the partner who'll be with you at the end. You don't want to start a process of spending money if someone sort of, checks off. So this is what I mean.
No,
these collaboration conversations.
I think you're absolutely right. We're going through the project optimizations. We're finishing this work off with Mitsubishi. We want to make sure that we have a surety with Rio and with Mitsubishi in terms of moving forward.
Okay, got it. Let's move on to ports. So Yukon government have approved just over $21 million on the port of what's it, Skagway? Is that what it's called?
Skagway, yeah.
Skagway. Okay, Skagway. So what are they doing that for you, or is that just something that you may be the beneficiary of?
Yeah, I'm just the beneficiary of that. So if you look at, the Yukon is a landlocked territory. Well, I guess it's officially, I think you can access the Arctic Ocean from the very top of it, but practically it's a landlocked territory. So historically, mineral exports have gone through Skagway. And so what's happened at Skagway is the ore terminal, the ownership of that ore terminal has transferred to the municipality of Skagway, and Skagway is redeveloping that facility. And so they are redeveloping it. There's a lot of cruise ship traffic that comes through that. It's a broad facility. So that's the key thing that they're looking at. What the Yukon government did is said, hey, can we make sure that we can continue to have ore export through this? So it's called the Marine Services Platform. They've committed $21 million to the municipality of Skagway to essentially lock in that access for ore export, for import, for a number of services. But important to us is obviously the ore export.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's really cool. And then green power. Now, the Canadian government has been stepping up. They are putting their hands in their pocket with lots of green initiative credits, across the board. How do you, again, we're sitting with Rio or Mitsubishi, hopefully, and how do you become the beneficiary of either some of that money or their ability to give you access to, as you say, the grid, as it were, on good terms?
Yeah. So, right now, the project looks to use LNG to generate our electricity, which, works well, but obviously is not as green as we would like it to be. The goal is to create green copper. And so, and that's Rio's goal as well. So, what we've committed to is working with them to identify a credible path to green power on the project. The good news on that is that the Yukon government is already started on that because the Yukon's running out of power. They've got no power. They're literally, last year they bought 5 rental diesel generators. These are like these shipping containers with diesels, and they just keep stacking them up, putting the jumper cables on them, and away they go. So they're running out of power. So the best solution, which has been identified, is to connect the Yukon grid to the British Columbia grid. That is well advanced. The conversations have happened between the Yukon government, the BC government. There was actually a meeting with Minister Wilkinson, who's the federal minister of natural resources, last week. That was the key. That was, I think, all they talked about. Moving that grid connection forward. So the Yukon government has applied for money through what's called the Critical Minerals Infrastructure Fund, which has been announced by the federal government. Expect that money to come forward here mid-year. That's step one. The engineering starts, the consultation starts. That's going to happen. It's just making sure that it happens, making sure that that gets advanced, and that's where that partnership with Rio is very key. Because, like I said, they're a big investor. They have a little less than 10%. They're okay. And they recommitted. They went from under 8% to, now close to 10% with that last investment. This is an important project to them. And they want to see it go forward. They want to see it go forward with green power that completely aligns with our interests as well.
Do you think the technical risks, of this project have been negated? Well, I guess they never are, but in the minds of the institutional investors, obviously Rio is still here. They continue to be here. The conversations continue to move forward. Is that a conversation which happens? Like, I know Fidelity are in it. They've got more than Mitsubishi, but Kopnick and Franklin and other institutional investors, do they go, it's big, I used to worry about that, not so much now. Technically, I think there were some questions, but not now. What is the conversation when you're trying to attract more institutional investors on board? What are they heading you with?
Yeah, in terms of this, as we've been developing this project for a number of years. We had a technical execution plan that we had on the project. The thing that's nice now, so let's think about Rio's investment as an example. They did a whole bunch of diligence, and then they made their initial investment. Then they did another 2.5 years inside the tent diligence, and then they invested another $6 million and renewed that investment. There's the diligence. They understand the project. They've signed off on the project. Same idea with Mitsubishi. So we're not talking about the technical risk on the project. The risk, of course, is on permitting. And the thing I always say, look, the permitting risk, what's the risk that the project doesn't get permitted? Very low. I would say close to 0%. The risk is that the timeline, it gets extended. And, we've already, and this is why it's important that we, work with Rio Tinto, work with the federal government, work with the territorial government to make sure that this thing actually moves in an efficient manner through the regulatory process.
So help me with something. So obviously Rio Tinto came in hot and heavy initially with $25 million. Since that, it's been a couple of million, 6 million. What's the kind of slowdown? Is it because they can't deploy the capital any quicker to do what they want to be doing? There's no need to spend big bucks, not a lot more drilling to do. Is it because you don't want them to go over the 10% mark and retain sort of control of that kind of conversation, like competitive tension conversation? I mean, how should people read that?
B. We don't want them over 10%. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very simple. I mean, we don't want them over 10%. We don't want them plus Mitsubishi to be over 20%. These are important things. I mean, it's great that, let's take a step back. We've been talking about Rio, and they've been a great partner. They're great to work with. However, they're very, very slow. They're not known for necessarily going out and writing big checks. I mean, they're very, very frugal with their money. So, as I said on the onset, our other key focus here is getting some other people to the table.
Right.
And they're not going to come to the table with Rio Tinto with 19% of the company.
Right. Okay. So understood, and obviously Mitsubishi, as we discussed, is there in there in the background as well. So okay. What I'm trying to say, it's like you're managing the process, but it kind of feels like you've got to make a decision quite soon, but you don't appear to be in a rush. It feels like. Do you know what I mean? It's like the potential is all there. You've de-risked it technically. You've de-risked it in terms of the partners have de-risked it technically for you, but you've got to go through this 3-year permitting process. You've kind of and that's critical to how you go about this. You're going to need the government to spend a little bit of money. What does the next 2-3 years look like in terms of announcements, conversations? What are you guys actually doing?
Yeah, and you got a good point. I mean, what's going to be the most exciting announcement this year? The most exciting announcement for us this year is going to be, hopefully, the Yukon government getting funding to kick off that grid interconnect work.
Right. Okay.
Me submitting my ESG statement. It's an important milestone. And that's the challenge of permitting. But why I think people should be excited about I'll be honest right now, it's a great deal. We've got, lots of money in the bank. And, if you look,
how much are you sitting on? How much?
So, we should end the year around 28 million. Yeah. So, it's a very nice.
And you're not exactly burning through that, ripping through that at the moment. So I guess that's a good news. But here's the thing, because you've kind of got this period where you're kind of going through the final hoops, of course, pardon the phrase, paperwork, as it were, the admin that needs to be done. And then comes the conversation with Rio and et cetera about how they choose to engage with you. And then there's, we've got to get to a point where we can make all the economics are understood clearly by everyone. And, can you get this thing built? In which case, that's a big balance sheet number required. At that point, have you guys checked out? Have the shareholders of this company checked out? We're not waiting for that kind of Lassonde curve depressed period of waiting to see if the money's there and how much it costs, etc.
Yeah, where we see, it's interesting. You're talking about our investors. So, some of our investors are like, negotiate a buyout with Rio or whomever, and get some competitive tension, get the best deal. Others are like, please don't sell, because if we get this project, let's be honest. This is a very economic project. Good relationship with Indigenous groups in Canada. Large copper gold project, if we get this project permitted, which is not an if, it's just plowing through and getting it done, we should be trading at a significant premium to where we are right now. And
but it's the waiting time.
Majority of
what's your message though?
Pushing for that.
But what's the message? You say, look, you're in this for 5 years, guys, but I tell you, the upside is either this is one of the largest annuity streams of cash and dividends, at some point when it goes into production. It is a big CapEx number, but in relation to the scale of the project, not really. And we've kind of got people at the dinner table whose balance sheet can't more than cope with that. We just need to come along for the ride. Between now and then, we've got stuff to do, but we will, come on for the ride. It's a bit facetious, but do you know what I mean? It's not a case of, look, don't worry, this time next year we're going to be rich. It's a case of, look, you got to know what you're getting into, but it's potentially one of the biggest projects in Canada.
Now on the books, it's the largest. It will be the largest copper mine in Canada. I mean, there's other projects that could get developed that are larger, but it will be the largest copper mine in Canada. It'll be the largest critical minerals project in Canada. And,
so let's talk about copper.
This is why. I mean, why is Rio Tinto invested?
Yeah. So let's talk about copper. Okay. There's gold everywhere. Not a lot of copper around, and not a lot of copper projects getting into production, and not a lot happening in jurisdictions
some
where
it's production.
Yeah. True. So let's talk about why Rio's interested in copper, why we should be interested in copper, because you kind of had an okay year this year, kind of bounced around, just below $4 most of the time. But why is the future going to be any different?
I mean, the copper story it's the easiest story out there, right? I mean, it is, as we look at the energy transition, as we look at electrification, lithium, maybe, nickel, maybe, copper, absolutely no replacement, no other alternatives than copper. So we know that demand for copper is coming. It is absolutely coming. And, as you said, I mean, how many gold juniors do you have on your show versus the copper juniors? Probably 10-1, something like that. 20-1?
I think gold's 50% of the market, right? 50% of the companies out there, gold. Well, except for the ones who've suddenly become lithium
the cannabis. Well, I guess cannabis. Okay,
but generally 50%. Where copper is, it may only be 5%. Yeah.
And it's the nature of the deposits. They tend to be larger. They tend to be few and far between. But I mean, again, getting the size, getting the quality. I mean, as I said, this is a project now that has been technically reviewed by Rio. They've continued to increase their investment. Technically reviewed by Mitsubishi. They made their investment. I mean, it's just moving this project forward. And I mean, I think you brought up a good point. I mean, the big win is getting this project through the regulatory process and permitted. But along that route, there's a lot of different milestones. We have purposely not signed on with Rio and Mitsubishi for these lifetime sort of commitments. They're a year and a half. And then we review things and say, hey, is this the right business model to move forward, or is there something else? So there's lots of opportunities along this road that we're moving forward, where there could be a buyout. We're working with talking to a number of other companies to potentially invest as well. And the copper market is just so small, and there's such a dearth of large quality projects in good locations, and that's exactly what we have.
Right. Okay. I'm sure we could talk about the copper market ad nauseum, but I think we violently agree. There's a huge demand wave coming down the line, and that supply-demand gap is getting looming and getting bigger.
I mean, the real question is why isn't copper $5? And because if you look at the supply and demand fundamentals, you look at the inventories, you look at all those sort of typical markers, they suggest that we should have $6 copper. The only thing holding it back right now is that people are worried that China's growth isn't quite as robust as people thought it would be. I mean, all it's going to take is a little bit better growth out of China, and boom, we're going to see significant appreciation.
I agree with you. I don't think it's as bad as people had thought it was going to be, but we also be nice to see that Europe and the US actually getting their money out and actually spending on these infrastructure projects, which have been promised at the rate that they said they were going to. But I guess with the next 12 months of sheer entertainment with the elections in the US, it's very unlikely people either Biden's going to spend hard and heavy, or people are going to be too distracted. We shall wait and see what the outcome is. But look, I'm Paul. I appreciate you coming on the show. As always, we don't speak enough, but always enjoy it when you do come on. And good to hear you moving things along nicely. Speak to you soon.
Very good. Thank you.